Welcome back. All right, so quick news of the day video for all you fine people on the internet, and any other way that you're accessing this, which if there's a non-internet way to access this. Anyways, BriseBois has signed an extension, general manager with the Tampa Bay Lightning. He was entering the final year of his contract. We don't know the exact details yet that I've been able to find, but basically when asked whether or not he was signed beyond this year, the answer is yes. So he has signed an extension with Tampa, which should surprise no one. Very good job as a general manager. They've won back-to-back Stanley Cups. They're going for 3 in a row this year. You kind of have to keep them around, right? Also, yesterday, the Dallas Stars signed a couple of 2021 draft picks. Wyatt Johnson was a surprise pick, being where he was in the first round, and Logan Stankoven. And Stankoven may very well end up being one of those second draft day steals, where in that second round and beyond, you may see some guys from the 2021 draft who are surprisingly good. We may see more busts, because again, there were a lot of players that were limited in what they were able to do last season. So the 2021 draft, really a wild card. And we're already seeing with the preseason that some of these kids are pretty darn good and might push for jobs this year. So, yeah. Montreal Canadiens news. While the C is not going to be worn this year, there's a rotation when it comes to the alternate captains. The one that will not be rotating out is Brendan Gallagher. So Gallagher, I mean, it kind of unofficially makes him the team leader. Interestingly enough, in the rotation for alternate captain, Nick Suzuki. Nick Suzuki at some point in time, I would think in the future, is going to be Montreal's captain. And so it makes total sense to have Suzuki wearing an A this year, at least for some of the games. But again, it'll be a rotational basis for Montreal as they just mess around to see, all right, so who's going to be the next leaders of this team. And it should be interesting to see who ends up wearing the C if, in fact, Shea Weber isn't able to come back next season. He's not expected to play at all this year. Tuukka Rask, in contact with the Calgary Flames, basically praised Dan Vladar and said that Vladar is an NHL-level goaltender. And for the Flames, that'd be very good news. I will say this, in what limited exposure I had to Vladar's work as a goaltender, as a Boston fan, I think it's a really smart pickup for Calgary. I think he's going to be a decent backup. But again, we don't really know until they get that full-on chance, which Aiden Hill's finally getting as well in San Jose. So, yeah, Vladar, I've got my fingers crossed that he does well for Calgary. Not necessarily against Vancouver, but I hope he does well the rest of the season. And, yeah, we'll see how well that goes. But Tuukka Rask praising him, that's kind of cool. And I'm sure Vladar was happy about that as well. But, yeah, there was a lot of goaltenders in Boston, and once they signed Ullmark, well, Vladar has to pass through waivers if they're going to send him down, so it didn't make sense to keep him around because you're going with Swayman, you're going with Ullmark, and then, of course, there's still Tuukka Rask potentially re-signing and staying in Boston. He's been working out in Boston, so he very likely is signing with the Bruins. Now, news that's come out this morning, I'm going to say straight out, I don't like this at all. So, Andrei Denyskin, out of the Ukrainian league, that was, setting the internet ablaze yesterday with news of him making a racial gesture towards a black hockey player. He gets 3 plus 10 games. Notice how that's phrased. Not a 13-game suspension. And I've seen places reporting it as a 13-game suspension. It's not. Because Denyskin can buy his way out of 10 games. So the Ukrainian league, which is a small league, I think it's like 8 teams. It's a relatively new league. And small capacity crowds and whatnot. Basically, Denyskin can buy his way out of 10 games for a little bit under $2,000 US. So, yeah, I find that odd. If you commit an act that a league says this is worth a 13-game suspension, then it should be a 13-game suspension. You shouldn't be able to buy your way out of 10 games. I can't imagine if the NHL did this, the chaos that you'd have, because you would have big money guys who, 5-game suspension, unless you can pay for it. Oh, okay. Here's $100,000 to pay for it then, I guess. Sure. Take it out of my escrow. I don't care. So, yeah, it is a mess. And so the hockey world has come out and not been very happy with this decision. And the player who was the recipient of the racial gesture retweeted out this decision and just put a series of dots as his comment on it. So clearly it is not enough. And yeah, we'll see what happens with this from here, but that's ridiculous. If it's worth a 13-game suspension, then you're gone for 13 games. You can't buy your way out of it. Again, just looking at it from a league perspective, I cannot imagine if the NHL brought in a situation where they said, we've decided we're going to let players pay money so they don't have to serve suspensions. That's ridiculous. So, yeah, 3 plus 10. So he's definitely gone for 3. And the double IHF tweeted it out as if like, oh, so see, they look what they did. Okay. No. So that's how that goes. But again, the Ukraine League is a small league. It's a relatively new league. And so I guess that's the standard they've put up. And there you go. And I did see people mentioning, like, this is a league we hadn't even heard of until a few days ago. Agreed. And so, there you go. All right. Moving along. Winter Classic tickets are now on sale. At least the NHL's put that out there. That tweet's about 6 hours old now. So I don't know how many tickets are still available on sale. So if you feel like going to Minnesota in January to sit outside and watch a hockey game that you may not be able to see from your seat very well, there you go. That being said, I've never been to an outdoor hockey game. I think it would be fantastic to go to a Winter Classic or a stadium game. And so, and again, despite the reality that in a Winter Classic it's going to be cold, and you probably won't be able to see that well, but just for that environment, just for that just the atmosphere of being there, and just that experience, I think it would be fantastic. So, and really, the NHL makes a lot of money on these games too. So that's why we went from having 1 outdoor game to having 2, and now we have 3, because it generates a lot more revenue to have these outdoor stadiums where there's a lot higher capacity than to have it indoors in the arena. Plus, again, I think it works really well. I think it's really TV friendly. The Lake Tahoe games last year, those were gorgeous. But of course, the ice melted. So there was that. So I don't think we'll have ice melting in Minnesota in January. But yeah, so there you go. Out of last night's games, just a couple of notes here. I didn't do full-on reviews for everything because, again, it's preseason, so you don't want to overreact. And like, for instance, I'll see a highlight reel goal, and I'll say, that was a nice goal. Who's that in net? And then I look it up, and I'm like, okay, so that's probably an AHL goaltender this year. So there's some of that I think happens in the preseason as well, where sometimes a goalie might make the player's goal look a little bit better than it might have been, where if you had your top goaltender in there, that might have been a save. But yeah, last night, Jesperi Kotkaniemi impressed in his debut, playing with Teuvo Teravainen, goal and an assist, and Freddie Anderson was impressive as well, 36 saves on 37 shots. Tony DeAngelo also played 19 minutes and 25, I think it's 19-25 he played. He played on the power play, played on the penalty kill. And so all of the additions for Carolina worked last night. And this is the thing. If all of them come together and if they all play well, Carolina's absolutely a Stanley Cup contender. And we'll see how things go for them. But they're going to be a power in the Metro Division. A division that we already know is going to be really stacked. If everything goes their way with Kotkaniemi, with Anderson, then with Ronta as the backup, with DeAngelo coming in, and just the other changes that have been made as well, Carolina absolutely could end up winning that division, and they could be really tough to take out in the playoffs. Also, Rangers news, Kaapo Kakko, who I've been a fan of since he came into the league. I know he's had his struggles. So far in the preseason, he has been very impressive. And so, getting on the score sheet and all of that, Kakko is ticking off some of the boxes here you would want to see him doing. Again, it's preseason. The games don't really mean anything, but for players like Kakko, for a guy like Kotkaniemi, if you're with a new team, if you're in a situation where you're on a new line and you're looking to stay in a top 6 role and you want to impress the coach, for these guys, these games are very, very important. And again, for the rookies, they want to impress and manage to stick around as long as possible before the team demotes them, either to juniors, to the minors, or whether or not they lend them out to Europe. So we'll see. But yeah, so Two guys with K's as their first letter of their last names. Kotkaniemi and Kakko. Both of them impressive. But let me know your thoughts. Who's been impressing you in the preseason so far? In the comment section below, let me know. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.